Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda. Welcome back.
Hi, David. How are you? The reason I was laughing, you were scratching your nose, and I thought you were waving your fingers at me.
Oh, okay. No, I was actually just scratching my nose.
Well, welcome to our listeners to episode 311.
And welcome home to Rhonda, who's been on a world adventure here for, seems like about 4, 5, 6 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, it was 4 weeks.
4 weeks, and went to the World Congress of Team CBT in Warsaw, Poland, and had all kinds of fantastic adventures. We missed you, and it's just great to have you back.
Yeah, thank you. The World Congress in Poland was a phenomenal experience. There were 14 members of the faculty. I was one of them, and there were about 150 participants who were studying Team CBT. So we're spreading the word of Team CBT and training Polish and Ukrainian therapists in Eastern Europe.
That is so neat. I'm giving, if you hear crinkly stuff, I'm giving some candy to my cat here, who's Sweetie Pie, who's just jumping up on her perch. And I just love it when she's here in the office with me. So,
okay. But when you turn toward your cat away from the microphone, it's harder to hear you. FYI.
Oh, I know. That's the disadvantage of this high quality mic. Well, I'll keep my head right here. Yeah. Okay. Good pickup. Thank you.
Okay, well, today we're going to be talking about the really cool podcast listener survey that you sent out.
Yes, the idea behind it was Jeremy, who is heading up our app team, would love to see us expand our audience. And once we get some funding for the app, we'll probably invest in that a little bit. But he was saying, let's poll some people who aren't podcast fans and see what they would want in a podcast. And I mean, I don't have any of those available. So I said, why don't we poll our podcast fans and see what they like and dislike? Because we did that years ago, and it was illuminating, and we've just never done it since. And I recently got access to a real easy way to do surveys. So I sent it out Friday, and we already have, more than 350 respondents. And I said, well, heck, let's share the findings with people right away. And,
yes.
Because it was a really nice survey response. I was awfully tickled and pleased with what all of you people said about what you liked and disliked. Should we dive right in?
Well, one of the comments you got about people, one of the things people did not like was a long endorsement that we read. Sometimes I read really long endorsements before we dive in. So let me just start by reading a short endorsement.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
So somebody wrote in, someone named Lily wrote in about a very early podcast that you did with Fabrice, episode 74, which was on 5 simple ways to boost your happiness. Number 1, do something rewarding. And Lily wrote you, oh my God, I just found your website, Dr. Burns. I feel like I've won the lottery. Thank you for all of your work. Depression and anxiety are such terrible things to live with. I'm hopeful and getting better now. Thanks to you.
Well, thank you, Lily. That's a lovely comment, and I hope you really enjoy the website. There's tremendous free resources there for people from all over the world, and the goal is to educate you, but also give you tools to lift your mood. So I hope that happens. And a lot of people said we were a little too slow getting into, as you said, getting into the podcast, so we're going to speed that up. But one thing, a feature we're going to start next week, we won't start that today because it requires a lot of preparation, but we're going to have a few minutes of dictionary reading at the start of each podcast. And this will help you build your vocabulary.
Okay. I get dictionary. I get a new word of the day. So I can look up my new word of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So should we start with
let's
the
dive in.
demographics?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
it's pretty interesting.
I think the gender female male ratio was roughly 60-40, and by memory that seems similar to what we had years ago when we were just getting started with our podcast. The age distribution went
Can I ask you a question about that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Do you think that's because there are more women who are interested in, I don't know if this is a question that can be answered. Do you think that more women are interested in like mental health or the process of therapy, and there are more women therapists than there are men?
Yeah, those are all speculations, and I can't necessarily answer that. I didn't have time to develop mathematical models with the data we got from the podcast. Would be theoretically possible to answer that.
Yeah, they're just guesses.
For example, the therapist ratio in our database is no 56% and yes therapist 33%, and then I could figure out the gender of the therapist and see if that somehow biases the sample. But we also know that in general, women struggle more, not in any data I've ever had, but in the so-called official data with anxiety and depression and mood problems in general. But I don't, really know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I'll also have data. I don't think I have it at the tip of my tongue right now, but in all of our beta tests, we look at gender differences. And I just can't remember right now the people who sign up for beta tests, the Feeling Good app, how they break down.
It's interesting that 56% of the listeners are non-therapists. That's a lot. The majority.
I think that's gone up since our last survey, where I thought it, but that just by memory, I couldn't find the original survey easily on my computer, but I thought it was a closer, but it's like, 2/3, 1/3. So we have a lot of people in the general public. And then how many of our listeners are looking for personal healing? Yes, 90%, no, 10%. And so that's the same as years ago. And that means that most of the therapists who listen are looking for personal healing. Now, of our listeners in general, if you're listening to improve your therapeutic skills, it was yes 47% and no 53%. And most of those no's were probably non-therapists.
Right.
See what I mean? So
yeah,
I
that
think
makes sense.
the therapists listen to improve their skills, but also for personal healing. And that's so consistent with our experience, say, in the Wednesday training group at Stanford and probably in your
the Tuesday group at Stanford.
Right, and your Tuesday training group, because it seems like just about everybody we've ever had in the Tuesday group, and this is going back 20 years or more now, has had a lot of insecurities. And that's why doing personal work in the Tuesday group is such a popular feature. And as it turns out, the personal work that we publish on the Feeling Good podcast, as you'll find out in a little bit, is one of all of you folks, one of your favorite topics for podcasts.
Yeah, it's amazing to usually the only people in a therapy room is the therapist and their patient or their client. And when you do personal work in the Tuesday group or just on the podcast, and then we publicize it, then everyone who's listening to that podcast is sitting in on that therapy process along with you and Jill, or you and your co-therapist and the patient that you're working with. And it's really an opening into a great deal of intimacy, and it's really a beautiful experience.
Right. And one of the comments that people made, and we'll read your comments, just highlights, was that there's something magical about the personal work. And this person and many others said that they feel personally healed by the personal work. And I think one of the reasons for that is that the insecurities that we have we share pretty much as human beings, and our weaknesses are shared by a lot of other people.
Yeah, there's universal suffering that we all can relate to. We got a lot of comments about the personal work that you did with Nasli in July. A lot of people related to her and what she was experiencing.
Yeah, that's so neat.
Yeah.
Now the age. Did we go through the age?
We did not yet.
They're pretty much uniformly distributed from age 21 to over 70. And by the way, if you go to the show notes, there's a link so you can get beautiful graphs and see all these things in pie charts and stuff. It's really, really cool. But one thing is that we didn't have anyone, I don't think, who was under 21 years of age. So we're not appealing to the, I guess it's a TikTok audience and younger folks. But aside from that, we've got people of all ages. Now we have a question for our audience, and see if you can make a guess of how many of our listeners had a graduate school as highest educational level, college, and versus high school, grammar school, and other. So how many do you think went to graduate school, and what percent do you think went to college? And just jot down a couple of percentages on a piece of paper, and then I'll tell you. It's not some fantastic or unusual thing, but I found it interesting that 64% of you attended graduate school and 29% of you attended college. So that together would be about 93%. And then the rest went to high school, grammar school, or some other type of educational training. So we have a very highly educated group. In Philadelphia, the program I created there we were at an inner city hospital, and our people had very little education. A lot of them, hadn't even graduated from the 5th grade, and I think 25% of our patients couldn't read or write.
Really?
Yeah, And they were real ezy to work with. People, were saying, "Oh, they won't like cognitive therapy. Cognitive therapy is too brainy." But it was just the opposite, actually.
So the 93% of our listeners have graduated from college and or gone on to graduate school. That's everyone almost.
Yeah, and that's probably because we have so many therapists who listen. Although it's only a third, so we have a very skewed audience with high education.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last demographic thing that was interesting, and this interested you, Rhonda, how many of our audience are team certified therapists? Because our podcast is all about team therapy. And only only 15%. And no was 85%. Now, that's probably a little misleading because only a third of our audience are shrinks.
Right.
And so if half of them are team therapists, that would come out to about 15% of our total population.
But isn't it also, I mean, I'm not a statistician like you are. It's not just all the audience, it's the audience members who completed this survey.
Oh, right. Yeah. Of the 355 people who completed the survey. Yep.
Uh-huh. Because wherever I go and there's a team community, like the Sunday trainings that you put on, which, let's let everyone know about the training that you and Jill are going to be putting on in October.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's going to be a fun one, I think. It's October 2nd. And it's a full day workshop from 8:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon. You'll get 7 CE credits if you're a mental health professional, and it'll be on social anxiety disorder. And there's 5 kinds of social anxiety disorder, like shyness, public speaking anxiety, performance anxiety, test anxiety, and then shy bladder or bowel syndrome. And we're going to be going over practical techniques, powerful to bring about fast acting recovery from any kind of social anxiety disorder. And so.
And there's probably going to be a link in your show notes to how people could sign up for that if they want to take that course.
I wish we could just tell them right now, because they can probably go to the Feeling Good Institute website, and that's where you can get all the registration information and stuff like that.
Yes, and you can get information at the Feeling Good Institute website, and actually on your website too, feelinggood.com, under the tab for therapists.
Oh, also in the right-hand panel of on my website, feelinggood.com, in the right-hand panel, it mentions this upcoming workshop and where you can go to learn more about it.
Yeah, great. So every time I do anything that's team related, even in Poland, people stop me and say, "Oh, I've listened to the podcast. I listen to the podcast," and it's usually team therapists saying that. So I'm curious. That's why it's so curious that only 15% of the people that responded to your survey said they were team therapists.
Yeah, but that would be half of the therapists, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Another kind of neat thing is that our statistician, we in the Feeling Good app, we have this really beautiful person who was on our podcast, as you know, recently, Jason. I think Mino is his last name. And he used to be a data scientist working in the area of diabetes, but he was all concerned that maybe our data in the Feeling Good app is skewed by people from the Bay Area. He said that could be a bias in the data that could somehow lead to misleading results. So I looked it up, and there's only 3 people in our Feeling Good app beta testing group from the Bay Area, because it's a question we asked on sign up. And the reason for that is because it's from our podcast audience, which, as you've pointed out, Rhonda, is from people all over the world, a lot of them in the United States, but from all over the place. All right. Well,
let's see. A lot of people have listened to a lot of the episodes.
Yeah. Should we have them guess? If you'd like to, I don't know if it makes it more interesting for you, but of the 350 respondents, how many do you think said that they've listened to all or nearly all of the 300 or so Feeling Good podcasts? Just jot down your guess. How many people have listened to all 300 episodes? And the answer is 26%
have listened to all, and 37% have listened to a lot, which adds up to 63%.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so
I guess tremendous loyalty, which I didn't know about that.
Our listeners are dedicated and loyal, which we really appreciate.
Yeah, you bet.
So thank you for that.
16% have listened to about half of them, which is itself huge. I mean, that's over 150 hours of podcasts. And 21% of you said that you've listened to just a few. And I hope you've enjoyed them and get the chance to listen to more. Now, what elements do you value the most was a cool question. And I'll read the categories and then see if you can guess which ones were the most popular. Here they are in no particular order. Guest interviews, laughter, warmth, inspiration, critical thinking, storytelling, live work, or teaching therapy techniques. Maybe why don't you guess 2 or 3 of those that you think might be in the most popular category, and then we'll tell you. I'm just trying to make this a little more fun for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here are the answers. I had actually read them in reverse order.
Mm-hmm.
And teaching therapy techniques was the winner, 86%. So we've got to keep that in mind and do more teaching of therapy techniques. And I think we can have more on the 5 secrets of effective communication with difficult critical comments from other people or from patients. We can talk more about the how to challenge negative thoughts and use the recovery circle and come at a negative thought from many different angles. And we have to think about some therapy techniques that both the general public and therapists would like to have emphasized some more. And then the second most popular, which delighted me, was live work, 72% of you. And boy, that's what I think too, because to me, the live work we do is like pure magic. And then it's also such good teaching to show you exactly how team therapy works. And then another thing that I found thrilling, 58% of you said that storytelling is one of your favorite things. And then another thing I liked, 57% of you said that you like critical thinking. And to me, that's very important, because that's the main thing I learned in college. I went to Amherst College, and critical thinking was emphasized. And I think it's really valuable in any intellectual or human pursuit to have critical thinking, because there's so much bad thinking and con artists and things like that out there. And then 54% of you like the inspiration that you get. 46% like the warmth. 42% like the laughter. That's one of my favorite things. And only 36% liked guest interviews. And there were 4 other categories that got under 30%. Three of them. Tears only got 23%. Banter only got 29%. And controversy was at the bottom of the list, only got 17%. And so I think people like inspiration rather than controversy, joy rather than crying.
Yes. And it's so interesting that 86% of the listeners who responded like teaching therapy techniques, but again, only 33% of the people who responded are actually therapists. So teaching therapy techniques is interesting to everyone, therapists and non-therapists alike.
Yeah, and we have to do more of that, I think, because that's what people really like. And by the way, we've got more live work coming up this Tuesday in the Tuesday group. We're going to work with a woman who's having a bit of an unexpressed conflict with her mother, and she's having panic attacks. And she said that we can likely use it if it's a good session for another 2-part podcast. You know who she is, but I won't say her name right now.
Okay.
But we'll do more live therapy work. Rhonda, you and I can do some more live work.
Yes, fun. Let's.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now, what kind of podcasts appeal to you the most? And again, this was 355 people, and this is kind of similar to what we just told you, but this was worded a little differently. But therapy methods, again, came out in first place, 194 of you of the 355 who responded so far to the survey. Live work was in second place, as it was in the previous question, 184 like that the most. Anxiety help was 168 people. The Ask David podcast was 163. That's these days with Matt, and a lot of people liked Rhonda and Matt and David, talking about these different questions that you all sent in. Self-help has become, I've heard, a dirty word that we're not supposed to use anymore, but 158 of you actually like the self-help the most. 156 like depression help. So anything in the area of depression, anxiety, self-help is very popular. Relationship problems was very similar. 154 of you wanted more in that area. team therapy training was pretty high, 126 of you. And then ones that were less popular were habits and addictions, 107, procrastination, 94 of you of the 355. Guest experts, again, was not terribly popular, only 88 of you.
Well, to me, that means people want to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, and, I love to talk. I love to talk to you, Rhonda, so we can fulfill that request real easy. And then weight loss was a surprise to me. It was the bottom of the list, 51. I've always been thinking, that's what people want to hear about, but it's not.
All those are really interesting. And again, therapy methods and live work are at the top of the list.
Yep.
And it's interesting that anxiety is higher than depression.
Well,
not by very much.
Statistically significant. They're very similar.
They're very similar.
But yeah, and relationship problems. Those three are kind of the big three. Now, here's another one. If you want to guess, we asked about paid ads because every day somebody bombards me with, we can put ads in your podcast and share the royalties with you 50-50, and this is going to be better than the California gold rush and things like that. And I've always said no for a variety of reasons. But I thought, let's see what you fans think. And so we had three categories: hate it, hate the idea, love the idea, unsure. And so write down, if you want to make a guess, if it's fun for you to guess, what percentage of you said you hate the idea of paid ads? What percentage of you said you love it? And what percentage of the users put unsure? And I realize these are just wild guesses, but you might just, if you have a paper and pencil or a pen or something, hate it, how many, love it, what percent, unsure, what percent. And here is the answer. Are you ready? Hate it, 28%. I was kind of surprised.
That's surprising.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty low.
20%. That's pretty low, not surprising. And then unsure, 52%. And there were a lot of comments on it too. If you go to the link and you want to read the comments and so forth, it was interesting. But the issues that people raised was, what will you be giving up and what will you be getting in exchange? Maybe you could use that money to help market and publicize the podcast to more people, but is it going to be interfering? They like just the quiet, soothing nature of the podcasts. Is it going to be distorting the content due to pressures from advertisers? Who knows? We've tried to keep it pure so far. That was what Fabrice wanted also.
What do you think about ads, David? Well, what do you think of even watching television?
Yeah. Well, I skip through them on TV. I record stuff. So
that's what we do too.
But I'm not crazy about the idea. I'm not dead set against it either. It does cost money to publicize things, and so it would be nice, but I've never been wild about it. What's your thinking, Rhonda?
Well, the other podcasts that I listen to, almost all of them have advertisements, and I find it really irritating, and I take my earplugs out while I guess how long the advertisement's going to be, and then I put it back in. Then I start listening again.
Oh, interesting.
But it is, and we count on word of mouth to publicize this podcast. And it would be awesome to have, more people listen to the podcast. And if the only way to do that is to advertise so that we could get some revenue so that we could then use that to publicize the podcast, maybe it's something that we could try temporarily or try and then do another survey and see how people respond to it.
Yeah,
as an experiment.
I don't think we have to decide about it right at this moment.
Yeah, but the feedback is really important. I was curious too that 20% love it. I wonder what people love about advertising. Are they learning
Well, they're
learning.
not saying necessarily they love the advertising, but they love the idea that we could have advertising and then professionalize the podcast, maybe include the quality of the podcast, the electronic recording, or do more editing and polishing. And, you know, I get stuff in the mail, every email every day. Oh, I can spiff up your podcast. I can help you sprinkle it into other social media. I can do this and I can do that for you. It's all obviously for money.
Yeah. I mean, people do that for a living.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Josh knows people who do that.
Oh, that
rather than people cold call
good
people.
at it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, Go ahead.
Well, I love the next question that you asked people.
Yeah, let's let people guess the answer to this. Would you recommend the Feeling Good podcast to a friend? And this is just yes or no. So see if you can guess how many said yes. Just give you a second to make a wild guess. And here is the answer. Only 3 people said they would recommend it to a friend. And that was triple our estimates. We thought only 1 person. No, I'm just bullshitting totally right now. Trying to get a rise, see if people were paying attention. 96% of you said you'd recommend it to a friend, and only 4% said no. So thank you so much for that, and please do keep doing that. And then the final quantitative thing, and then we had some neat written responses too, was what grade would you give the Feeling Good podcast? An A, a B, a C, a D, or an F? So see if you can guess how many gave it an A, how many gave it a B, how many gave it a C, and how many gave it a D or an F. Probably won't be too hard to guess this, given all the other data that you have already. Well, here's the answers. 77% of you, bless your hearts, gave us an A, and 20% of you, bless your hearts, gave us a B. So we're getting an A or a B from 97% of you. And that's very generous, given the fact that all of you, I'm sure, have podcasts or elements that you're not terribly excited about. And then 3% of you gave it a C, and then there were no D's or F's. And I thought that was pretty strong, because let's say an A would be a 95 out of 100, and a B would be like on average an 85 out of 100. And so since there's way more A's than B's, the mean rating would probably be, 91 or 92. I'm just calculating off the top of my head here. But I think that's amazing, because with the Feeling Good app, we don't get ratings nearly that high. And so and then that's what Jeremy, who's the head of our app team, has said. He says, if you guys look up your ratings, you've got practically 100% 5-star ratings from people. And by the way, one thing you can do, and somebody said we should tell our podcast fans this, so I'm telling you now, and maybe try to remember to put it in the show notes, that if you go and rate our app and write a review, apparently that's the thing that most boosts your ratings in terms of search engines and things of that nature. So that's something that you can do if you're so moved, and if you'd be willing to give us a 5-star review and put some kindly comments there, it might help. Now we get into written responses. Before we do that, any other observations on any of this so far, Rhonda?
No, it's just heartwarming.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it really is.
Think.
Yep. Now, what are the elements you like the best? And by the way, which I've said a couple times, I'll say for a third time, there's prominent links in the show notes to this report. And I didn't have time to go through all, like, what elements do you like the best? And there were 356 written responses. Everyone, I guess, put something down just about.
Nice.
And I just looked at the first page or two and jotted down a few. I read through almost all of them. And but we can just give some highlights. Do you have the report in front of you, Rhonda?
I do.
So, this person said, what do you like the best? Brilliant teaching and great techniques. Thanks for that. Let's take turns reading ones that
Okay.
found.
Always pick up a new concept.
Right. And then learning about techniques to help patients from experts in the field, ! Realistic and humorous portrayals and disclosures.
So are you reading from the report or the notes that you sent me?
The notes, that's pretty much identical.
Okay. People like the use of paradox.
Right. And then did you say the idea that long-lasting change can happen quickly?
No, I skipped that one for some reason.
Oh yeah.
That's really
glad,
yeah.
I'm glad that people like that, because I get busted on that
Yeah.
quite a bit from people
Mm-hmm.
who don't like to hear it. They don't believe it's true.
Yep. Oh, so so people like the idea that they're learning from listening to this podcast that long-lasting change can happen in people's lives very quickly, and that's really powerful. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool, and it's so different from the idea of, I call it the Woody Allen type of therapy, where you go to therapy for the rest of your life.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. But he sure made some funny movies, and then he turned out to be a little bit on the odd side in surprising ways.
Right. That's well, people don't want to talk about controversy, so let's keep reading.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah. This person wrote that therapy. This is kind of like therapy by proxy that seems to happen during the live therapy work, even when situations are different. It's amazingly meaningful.
That's neat.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And someone wrote, I enjoy the Q&A podcast where you cover 4 to 5 great questions. Having Rhonda and Matt, and of course, Dr. Burns, give their viewpoints on topics that can be helpful to everyone is really useful.
Yeah. So we're definitely going to keep doing that, keep doing the live work, and we're going to keep working on teaching you techniques, whether to use if you're a non-therapist or to use if you're a therapist. We'll focus more on some of those themes. Let's see. This person said likes best learning how to retool my brain. Dr. Mark Noble would like that, because that's what he's been emphasizing, that you're actually changing the circuitry in your brain especially when you're using the daily mood log to write down your negative thoughts and then crush them.
You're making me read all the ones about me, which is kind of embarrassing. Okay, somebody else. We're not going to read all 356. We're only going to read a couple more.
Yeah, 350. That'll be plenty. 350.
Yeah. So somebody wrote, I love the feeling of comfort I get from hearing your stories, both personal and from guests. I was particularly touched by Rhonda's openness when she first joined the podcast and worked through her feelings of inadequacy. I think about those episodes a lot because I relate to them.
Yeah, and I think that, when you're vulnerable, you make the greatest impact in a positive way on other people. I don't just mean you, Rhonda, but I mean David and all of us. And I think people so tremendously appreciate that.
Yeah. Because we're being real human beings. We're not just putting on an act. Yeah.
Here's another person said what he or she liked the best was feeling less alone. And that relates to what we just said. And it's touching to know that this is how the Feeling Good podcast functions in the lives of a lot of people. We're learning things really important. At least I am.
Yeah, for sure. Me too.
Your survey, you're teaching us.
And so, shall I read the one more? Someone wrote, what they like best is the live therapy sessions. Hearing Dr. Burns, Jill, Rhonda, and others do externalization of voices, positive reframing, and other techniques is so incredibly powerful.
Okay, and then there's hundreds more. I only skimmed the first dozen or so. They were all fantastic. And so if this type of thing interests you, hit that link and, what is it? Fast your eyes or feast your eyes. Yeah, there's a lot of beautiful comments. Now, elements you like the least. Ouch. Uh-oh. Here's where we get, well, we asked to be criticized, and now we have to face the music. You want to start it out?
Sure. The long intros sometimes before the topic gets started. People don't like that. At least this person doesn't. So
we'll try to speed it up. Boasting and rambling on and on. That sounds like one of our podcast people. I wonder. We'll have to find that person and fire him.
Sometimes the attitude towards other practices and theories is condescending and fails to appreciate the contributions different approaches make to understand and alleviate people's suffering.
That might be that same boasting person.
I wonder who that is.
Another person said what they like least is endorsement emails.
Maybe we should read more. Well, we actually don't get that many, but maybe we could read more critical emails that we get. But we just don't get that many.
Yeah, that's true.
So, okay, something I've noticed in live coaching is that there seems to be a strong focus on externalization of voices as a method. In Feeling Great, I love your 50 methods, but I wonder why it feels like 80% of the time you focus on externalization of voices versus other methods.
Well, we can try to teach more of those other methods. The reason we use externalization of voices is two. It brings about rapid enlightenment. You can often bring a person from despair to joy in as little as 2 or 3 minutes. And when we're doing live therapy, most of you want to see change. You want to see the person healed within the session, and we nearly always do that. And one of the reasons is because we use externalization of voices. However, when we do externalization of voices, it isn't one method because it's a way of doing lots of methods. You can do examine the evidence, the acceptance paradox, self-defense paradigm, the counterattack technique, and on and on. But that's why that we do it. And when I'm in therapy, I like to do it because I can see right away if the person is getting it or if they're faking it. And then if they're faking it, I can attack them more and make them cave in. Then I can do role reversals and show you how to really blast that distorted thought out of the water. So it's just 100 times more dynamic than most of the other methods. But you're right. We have a lot of them, and we'll see if we can teach you about more of them.
Yeah. That'll be fun for us too. I'm going to, so somebody,
your turn?
Yeah, it's my turn. I think, no, it's your turn. It's your turn. I'm sorry.
Next criticism. He says, honestly, and this is super nitpicky, but I felt like I had to include something in the liked least section. Otherwise, I think the Feeling Good podcast is A+++. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's
We're sorry
nice.
We forced you to put something in the negative section.
Okay, so the next one is, I'm not a fan of the hokey and the weird hello Rhondas, etc. Ditto for the 4-letter words. IMO,
That's
just...
in my opinion.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's embarrassing. In my opinion, these distract from the content. They dumb down, lessen the credibility of the presenters and the content. They're distracting and they make me cringe. I won't quit listening. It's just unprofessional and low class.
And the next one, and thank you for that. We didn't have the weird hello Rhonda today, except I kind of snuck it in just now.
Yeah, because you were making that face at me.
And hard to complain about something this good was the next one.
Nice.
And then there's hundreds more of these. So And I spent quite a bit of time reading them and going through them. So we take them to heart. And do we have time to do one or two more categories here, Rhonda?
Well, we've been recording for 45 minutes, so maybe we should quit.
Yeah. Okay. There's.
What do you think?
I think this is giving you a feel for it. And if you want more, I worked really hard on the show notes, and so if you go to the show notes, I think one comment I will make that just still in my mind. But if you go to the show notes, I highlighted more stuff that you can skim through, and then you'll find the link to the actual report if you want to examine it in more detail. Some people made the suggestions that we should have topics, like 4 or 5 weeks in a row on different topics. They said, like, why not have 5 weeks on the 5 secrets of effective communication, maybe one technique per week? And somebody else said, why don't you have, 5 weeks on secrets of, how to thrive and become happier? Well, we've done that exact thing already. And so I put a link to the list of Feeling Good podcasts, because there's a lot of gold in them. There are hills, and we're willing to do that. Those are great ideas, and we're willing to do more batching of podcasts into topics. But a lot of the things you're asking for, like what are the key things on overcoming anxiety? There's so much of that already. There's even a free anxiety class at feelinggood.com, and it's all based on podcasts. And so you can take that class. It's free. Every 2 days you'll get a new podcast on a different aspect of overcoming anxiety. So there's a tremendous amount of stuff there for you already. And to use the search function, which isn't as good as it used to be, but it's still pretty good. You just type into the magnifying glass on my website, feelinggood.com, like you can put OCD or anxiety or 5 secrets of effective communication or relationship conflicts or cognitive distortions. And then you'll get a whole bunch of the podcasts on that exact topic will come up.
And just even if we're not reading, you have this one beautiful topic, what other topics might interest you? And, it sounds like, David, you're taking all of those suggestions to heart, and that we could have podcasts on all of these interesting things like trauma work and how to make friends and integrating the Buddha Dharma with cognitive behavioral therapy and team.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're taking all of your suggestions to heart.
Yeah. And somebody said, I want to see, how would you use 5 secrets? And if you're treating or in a relationship with someone with borderline personality disorder, for example, what are the keys to treating borderline personality disorder? We might record that immediately after this podcast. We got it right up there on the agenda,
Yeah, that was a recent
next week.
Yeah. And that was a recent Ask David question.
Was it? Oh, well, yeah.
So we can continue some examples of how you would respond to 5 secrets.
Right. So thank you so much, everybody. You responded so quickly to that survey. You were so thoughtful. It was really mind-blowing. And here's the last thing. Why would you or wouldn't you recommend the Feeling Good podcast to a friend? And Rhonda and David are so genuine together, smart, funny, and informative. It can change the way you live life. It helped and encouraged me. It helped me get out of a black hole. Life skills everyone should learn, and hundreds more warm and beautiful comments. The 5 secrets have rewired my brain and helped me save my relationship too.
Wow.
Dr. Burns' personality and sense of humor is just the icing on the cake. Here I go promoting myself. I didn't know that was in this one. I apologize. But anyway, thank you so much for all those heartwarming comments. You've really made my day. Maybe you've kind of made our year. What do you think, Rhonda?
I agree. I mean, it's something that I've always thought is that you are one of the founders of not just Team CBT, but cognitive behavioral therapy. So the opportunity to interact with you and learn from you, even if people are interacting by listening to the podcast, it's really, it's an honor and it's just a joy. And
thank you so much.
I'm promoting you, of course.
One last thing I wanted to mention. People are always saying, "Oh, you're always treating therapists. They're so easy to treat. Why don't you treat real people?" And sometimes that's expressed with a bite, and sometimes as a suggestion. And the reason I work with therapists is because I'm no longer in practice. I don't carry malpractice insurance. And if I treat a general citizen, that will be construed as the beginning of a therapeutic relationship. When I treat a therapist, it's in the context of their training, and it's not legally construed as the beginning of an ongoing therapeutic relationship. It's just part of what you're supposed to do in your training, to do your own personal work. But I have researched this extensively because we have both therapists and non-therapists using the Feeling Good app for personal reasons. And so we've had hundreds and hundreds of people beta test the Feeling Good app. And I can tell you two things. Therapists who are using it for personal treatment, their mood scores are not significantly different from those of non-therapists at the start. And their rate of recovery is not different from non-therapists. They're not easier. They're not more difficult to treat. They're just like anyone else, and the nature of problems the therapists have is exactly the same. Now, all that being said, if you don't believe what I'm saying and you want to see David work with real, so-called real people, believe me, therapists are a lot more real than you think. But if you want me to see me work with lay people, that's very easy. I just want you to provide funding for me, because I treat everyone for free. And so I would need at least 5 or 10 years of prepaid liability insurance. And I want you to indemnify me, because I want to protect my family and I want to protect myself. And so if you want to put up that kind of pretty vast amount of cash and arrange that for me, then, I'll treat so-called normal people or regular people, but it won't be in any way different from what we're doing in the live therapy sessions.
Yeah. Like, therapists don't have the same problems that non-therapists have. We all bleed when we cut.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We love you all.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.